Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Almassian. You know very well that journalists who question the narratives of the establishment, the mainstream narratives, and try to push the government lines and try to find holes in the government lines are being fought against consistently. First, by the so-called journalists who work for the establishment. I call them prostitutes. Secondly, by the political elites who instruct these journalists, of course, to fight against the real journalists. And third, they have prepared conditions, paved the way for the right conditions in the society after indoctrinating enough people so that they practice their social control and social oppression and suppression against the journalists. So we have now citizens, instead of them questioning the governments, they are doing the government's bid against real journalists. If you remember, a few months ago, I hosted Reade on my channel on Syriana Analysis, and we just touched the surface of one of the topics that she was talking recently, the topic of her being sexually abused, assaulted by Joe Biden when he was a Congress member, and Reade was a junior staff in his team. And in 2020, she went public and she spoke about her case after she exhausted all her options, legal options against Joe Biden. And you know that in the United States, challenging powerful people is quite dangerous. And you know what could happen to you if you expose certain facts that are detrimental in the collapse of the system in the United States, such as the case of Jeffrey Epstein, for example. People commit suicide, right? At so many cases, people who were advisors, who were working for Clintons, people who were friends with Jeffrey Epstein, they found dead. So there's so many cases that it's really dangerous to speak about this case, right? And now a person, an American citizen, comes to public and says, the president of the United States, the most powerful nation in the world, that claims to be policing the world and claims to have a moral high ground, that claims that they're preserving a rules-based order, and this person who is pushing humanity on the verge of World War III is actually a rapist. He assaulted me. And this story is believable because there are so many repetitive examples that in the past, for example, with Bill Clinton, for example. And we know the story, of course, of Jeffrey Epstein. And I personally, I believe Reade. I am a person who can read eyes and I can read body languages and I can feel if the person is lying or not. And I have nothing personal to gain from this case. I will definitely get so much headache for speaking about this case, and I will not gain anything. But I'm always on the side of the truth. And I believe that Reade's case must be spoken about, must be addressed. And if Joe Biden is found guilty and he was acting immorally and abused Reade, he should receive his sentence, just like any other person, or he is impeached. So Reade, unfortunately, it seems that she had to leave the country because she was going to give her testimony under oath about this case. And apparently some people threatened her with physical harm. So she traveled to Russia, just like Snowden did. And from Russia, she participated in a press conference declaring or telling the entire story and what happened with her and what steps did she take against Joe Biden, whether they worked or not, and why she fled now to Russia. So I will share with you the video of Tara. This is from the press conference on her channel. Let's watch it first together. It's around 10 to 12 minutes. Let's understand the background of the issue, the context, and we will come back.
And I feel really happy to be here, and I feel safe. And for those of you that don't know me, I am a writer and author, and I'm a former aide for Senator Joe Biden. I also worked for Leon Panetta and worked for congressional races for the Democratic Party and for a state senator. In 1993, when I was in my 20s, while working for Joe Biden, I was sexually harassed by him and sexually assaulted. I did not go to the media at that time. I filed a report and went through protocol. Nothing was done. I was threatened. I lost my job and I lost my career as a result of coming forward. Then in 2019, it became clear that Joe Biden was running for president, although he was not the front runner at that time. There were 7 other women that came forward. One of those women was Lucy Flores. She was a political representative in Nevada, and she was getting torn to pieces by the press for coming forward about Joe Biden's inappropriate behavior. I decided at that time to speak out about my experience in 1993. But before I did, I tried to reach out to congressional representatives privately. No one responded. I reached out to Bernie Sanders. I reached out to AOC. I reached out to Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, who were in California, my representatives, and they gave me silence, no response. Then I went to an organization called Time's Up. Time's Up was an organization in America that was prompted by the Me Too movement, funded by Hollywood stars for millions of dollars to provide legal and PR assistance to people who were coming forward about powerful people that had been harmed. Time's Up has since been dismantled. It's been discovered it was corrupt. And part of the corruption was my case. I went to them for help, not knowing they were already on the payroll for the Joe Biden campaign. He gave them, according to FEC, which is the Federal Elections Commission records, over $2.2 million while I was trying to come forward to try to silence my story. This came out in the press, but very little coverage, of course, in the Western media. While during that time, I was accused, when I first came forward, of being a Russian asset, of lying, of being discredited. I was accused of all kinds of things, threatened with prison, threatened with my life, my family, my pets. It was very difficult. I kept speaking the truth. I kept pushing forward. I kept pushing forward to Republicans, hopefully that would bring an investigation into Joe Biden. Finally, this year, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, both US Congress representatives, said they were going to investigate Joe Biden. But then what happened is, of course, the attacks on me started again and the threats. People started messaging me, asking me if I was suicidal, asking me, making vague threats. And I could see that starting again. And I said, I put out a viral tweet saying, that I am healthy and I am determined to bring Joe Biden to justice, to bring some sort of investigation, and to testify under oath before Congress if asked. During that time, I had the opportunity to come to Moscow, Russia. I've always loved Russia. I do not see Russia as an enemy, nor do many of my fellow American citizens. This illusion that Russia is the enemy is propagated by a few Washington elites who are determined to cause problems. In fact, I'll take you back a minute. In 2019, one of the things that got me in a little bit of trouble was that I said out loud that Joe Biden, if he were to become president, would try to go to war with Russia because of his warmongering in the past, and because based on what I had heard when I worked way back as a staffer and then watched as a geopolitical analyst what was happening and the movements that were happening by NATO and by the United States. So that brings me back to the present. I had an opportunity to have my book, which is already published in different languages. I took that opportunity and had meetings and had a vacation and enjoyed Moscow. Apparently, the US government wasn't happy with my choice of vacation spots. So it became clear that going back might be a problem. I don't know the level of which the attacks will continue. I only know that when I got off the plane in Moscow for the first time in a very long time, I felt safe, and I felt heard, and I felt respected. And that has not happened in my own country. I did talk to US Congressman Matt Gaetz. I have not concealed anything. I told him I was in Moscow, Russia, and I told him why. And he said something very stunning. I am considered a whistleblower, as you know, in the United States. One of the cases I will be testifying is about how the DOJ and the FBI has weaponized by the Biden administration against its own citizens. So he said, Tara, you know, I'm worried about your physical safety in the United States. As a US citizen, to hear a US congressman basically say they couldn't protect me in a whistleblower case is stunning. And it makes me angry. And I want to say to my fellow American citizens that as these cases against all of us are coming forward that speak out, I want you to remember the US Congress works for the US citizens. They work for us. We don't work for them. And we need to take back our power. We need to take back our truth and be able to speak it without fear of reprisal or physical harm. So, the American people are very sick of hearing about the Russophobia. The poll numbers are showing they're not in support of the proxy war that NATO and the US are waging. I have been very outspoken about this. As a geopolitical analyst, I've been very outspoken about the US and its endless wars. There are many of us, and I spoke at the Rage Against the War Machine, a rally in Washington, D.C., that are tired of all the resources going into the military. This year, for the first time coming up, the defense budget will be $1 trillion, which is an unimaginable amount. Meanwhile, roads in America are falling apart. The infrastructure is, the economy is down, and inflation is up 40%. We have the highest child poverty rate we've ever had, the highest homeless rate in history. Our economy is crashing, and they're continuing to warmonger. Recently, it came to my attention that one of those representatives said something incredibly deplorable. And that's what he said was, speaking, I believe, to the Kiev regime, that he thought the money spent was well spent killing Russians. The only word I can think for something like that is evil. That is evil, and that is not the sentiment of the American people. And for a representative of the US Senate, US Congress, to continue these rhetoric that is so hateful, it's so deplorable. So much of what you've seen in a lot of my content when I've talked about my case, I've also talked about the targeting of Russia and Russians and even your president. I think it's wrong, and I've spoken out about it. And there are many people around me that think it's wrong, but are afraid to speak. So further, I want to talk about the whistleblower issue. Whistleblowers, there's an act in Congress, we're supposed to have protection. Where's my protection? Where are others? Why are so many people having to seek shelter in Moscow? I feel very lucky to be here. I don't want people to think that anyone told me what to say or anyone put me up to this. I feel very fortunate, and these are all my own thoughts. And if you follow my Twitter and you follow my content, you know I talk about geopolitical issues. You know that I analyze those things. You know how I feel about all of these things. And you also know that I never got an investigation into Joe Biden forward. It never happened as of yet. Now, I'm told that very soon it will. Hopefully, I'll be able to testify. And one thing I want to make clear, and I want my fellow American citizens to really hear this if they see this, you know, don't be intimidated, because I'm not. I'm not going to be intimidated, bullied, or silenced. I'm going to speak out, and I'm willing to speak under oath about the corruption I witnessed, about the crime I experienced. And it is remarkable that Joe Biden raped me when I worked for him in the US Congress, and I'm supposed to be the fugitive. That is ridiculous, and it's unacceptable, and I don't accept it. So as I move forward, I hope to find safety here. I appreciate my friends in Moscow, Russia, that have opened their arms to me and given me that safety, including Maria Butina. So thank you. I am going to make a request, and it's a large one. I'd like to apply for citizenship in Russia from the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and hopefully Maria Butina can help me with that from the State Duma. I don't know what will happen with that, but I do promise to be a good citizen, and I promise to move forward with my life in a positive way. And, you know, I hope to also have my American citizenship, because the whole thing is, my Russian brothers and sisters, I just want to thank you for your warmth and for your kindness and for opening your heart to me when at a very scary time. Spasiba.
So, in short, in 1993, Raede was harassed, assaulted, raped by Joe Biden. This is what Raede says about her former boss. She followed the protocol when such crimes happened, and what to do as an employee in the Congress. So she followed the protocol, and she filed a report about it. Consequently, she lost her job. She lost her career as a junior staffer for Joe Biden. 7 other women came forward and spoke against Joe Biden for similar cases when they were working for him, when he was a congressman. She went to the opposition in the Democratic Party, those who claim to be left wing, those who claim to be against the establishment, and they are nothing but puppets for the establishment, giving the impression to the American people that they have a choice and they have different voices in the Democratic Party, and especially Bernie Sanders and AOC, those 2 grifters, and of course Nancy Pelosi, who she's with the Me Too campaign, but when it comes to a person who was assaulted by somebody in her own team, she refused to look into this case. She went to the Me Too movement, and she found out that the movement is also financed by Joe Biden campaign. She was called a Russian asset by the media. She was threatened physically, and she was threatened for her family and her pets. And finally, the Congressman Matt Gaetz, I think his family name is, if I'm pronouncing right, Gaetz. He's a Republican. He embraced her case, and he wanted to bring Tara to testify under oath. Up until this moment, it didn't happen. Now, Matt Gaetz told Tara that I'm worried about your physical safety. And Tara went to Twitter and she said, I'm not suicidal, guys. If something happens to me, I didn't commit suicide, because there are lots of precedents about these cases, right? So one has to become clear and speak about these cases. She says the elites in the United States won't war with Russia. The people aren't interested in such a war. And finally, she went to Russia. She feels safe there, and she will apply for Russian citizenship, which I think will be taken by the media and used against her. And they will try to destroy her in any way possible. They will try to say, like John Kirby, he called her a potential Russian citizen. Every other American mainstream media outlet, the elites, the establishment, the military-industrial complex, the social media platforms, everyone who are part of this cabal will come out and say she's Russian, so she doesn't have a credibility. So if somebody has a Russian citizenship and she was assaulted sexually by Joe Biden or anyone else in the United States, we shouldn't believe because this person carries a Russian citizenship. This is the logic. See? In my opinion, she looked very tired, exhausted, but at the same time relieved and courageous for still continuing to bring justice for herself and probably for thousands of women in the United States who are victims for such crimes. And in my opinion, she has to expect a brutal comeback from the mainstream media. They're already doing it. And they will try to destroy her reputation. They will try to destroy her credibility. They will try to drive her crazy. They will do everything in their capacity to destroy her psychologically. So she has to expect a lot, in my opinion. So John Kirby was asked about this case. And this is what he says.
Tara Reade, who was an aide to then Senator Biden back in the 90s and then in 2020 accused him of sexual assault. She announced yesterday she's seeking citizenship in Russia and she feels safer there. Does the White House have any reaction to that announcement given the accusations that she's made against President Biden?
I think we'd be loath to comment on the musings of a potential Russian citizen. That's really up for her to speak to.
Does the White House believe that her allegations may have been motivated by her allegiance to affinity for Russia?
Difficult to say. I mean, I can't get inside her head and speak for her motivations and intentions. That's really for her to speak to. The one thing I will say is that the allegations that her life was at risk by the United States government, absolutely false, baseless. There's nothing to that.
So first, she's a potential Russian citizen, so she should be lying. So every Russian citizen who have Russian passports, we cannot believe them because they're Russians. Just if you were born a Russian, we cannot believe you. If this is not racism, I don't know what is it. Secondly, he says the threats against her safety are baseless. How do you know, John Kirby? Do you think Joe Biden will instruct his national security team or his the people who do the dirty job, right? And the person who killed Jeffrey Epstein again in prison, do you think this was somebody from the CIA with a badge who came, or people who can do such dirty work, who are anonymous? You don't know their faces. They don't have any positions. And I truly believe if Tara Reade continued with her case in front of the Congress, they would have harmed her. I'm pretty sure about that. But you know what's pity about the mainstream media? And I'm not going to share all the articles now, but if you go now to the mainstream media, go to The Guardian, go to the CNN, go to all these media outlets, they all call her a defector. Tara Reade is not a defector. She doesn't have a position in the US government. She's not an official. She's not a diplomat. She's not a military personnel. She was a junior staffer for Joe Biden 3 decades ago. So calling her a defector has a purpose. They want to give the impression that she defected from her American nationality or American belonging, and she became Russian. So she betrayed her own nation. This is the reason why they're using the term defected and the defector. These media outlets are so brutal, believe me. And there are so many idiots on social media outlets are calling her traitor. And I truly wish that if Tara Reade is watching this video, she ignores these comments, because those people are parasites and they are trying to destroy her mental health and question her patriotism. Traitor for doing what exactly? So if any American citizen goes anywhere in the world, let's say to Germany, and he applies for German citizenship, is that person a traitor, or this is only exclusive if you apply for Russian citizenship? And do these people know that they're doing the government's job? Or maybe they have already FBI, NSA, CIA, cyber units on Twitter doing their job. It's either this or that. They're either very idiot or they are assets for the American security apparatuses. There is no other explanation. She betrayed who? Why is she traitor? The traitors are sitting in Washington, D.C., sending your billions and billions, tens of billions from your pockets to Ukraine for money laundering operation and selling weapons. They're filling their pockets from your pockets. All this inflation is theft. It's robbery. They're robbing you in the United States. You are paying for this war. Some of this money is going for weapons, and some others are going to money laundering operations and being recycled and coming back to the pockets of the elites in the United States, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. This is not the only case that happened this week. We hosted, again, a few weeks ago, Kit Klarenberg. And this is it. You remember we hosted Kit Klarenberg and for his report investigation about the CIA assets. Two of the people who participated in hijacking the planes on 9/11 were CIA assets. And we spoke about them. Guys, the videos that I made with Kit and with Tara are in the description below if you like to watch. So he was arrested by the anti-terrorism police upon his arrival in London and subjected to interrogation for 5 hours for his political views and journalistic reports. I remember also Vanessa Billy was stopped by the same police a few months ago. And now we have Gonzalo Lira. He's detained in Ukraine and he faces up to 13 years in prison for supporting Russia and criticizing Zelensky. Just quick, I would give you some background what happened with Kit. This is from the Grey Zone because he works for Grey Zone. As soon as journalist Kit Klarenberg landed in his home country of Britain on May 17, 2023, 6 anonymous plainclothes counter-terror officers detained him. They quickly escorted him to a back room where they grilled him for over 5 hours about his reporting for this outlet. They also inquired about his personal opinion on everything from the current British political leadership to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. At one point, Klarenberg's interrogators demanded to know whether the Grey Zone had a special arrangement with Russia's Federal Security Bureau to publish hacked materials. During Klarenberg's detention, police seized the journalist's electronic devices and SD cards, fingerprinted him, took DNA swabs, and photographed him intensively. They threatened to arrest him if he didn't comply. Back in the interrogation room at Luton, Klarenberg was asked which passports he held in his possession. They seemed surprised that I only had a British passport with me, he recalled. The police then grilled him about whether he owned foreign property, which countries he had visited, and why. He was compelled to provide his address in Belgrade, disclose how much he paid for rent, and bizarrely whether his energy costs are included. The officers then demanded to know why Klarenberg lived in Serbia. The officers asked Klarenberg about articles including his report on the CIA's recruitment of would-be 9/11 hijackers, as well as his thoughts on 9/11 conspiracy theories. Then came a blizzard of questions relating to the Grey Zone. How much was Klarenberg paid by this publication, how often, and into which bank account? He owned the site. How much contact did he have with Max Blumenthal, the author of this article and editor of the Grey Zone? Had he met Blumenthal in person? The counter-terror officers then rattled off a series of unfounded questions related to Russia. Does the Grey Zone have an agreement of any kind with Russia's Federal Security Bureau to publish hacked material? Has Klarenberg knowingly been in contact with any FSB operatives? Is he in touch with the current or former personnel of Russian state media? Who owns the gray zone, and is it sponsored by Russia? As has been publicly stated many times, the Gray Zone is a fully independent outlet founded by me, Max Blumenthal. Unlike many of our adversaries, this outlet doesn't accept funding or support from any state, including Russia. At this point, the officers took Klarenberg's bank cards out of the room for an extended period. They also seized his camera memory cards and SIMs, demanding he provide PIN codes to open them. Throughout the interview, the counterterrorism police probed Klarenberg aggressively on his political affiliations and beliefs. Was he involved in any activist causes in Belgrade? What did he think of the Russian government? Did he have an opinion on Russia's arrest of Ivan Geskovich of the Wall Street Journal? What did he think of Rishi Sunak? After 5 hours, the counter-terror police seemed to have run out of questions. They had, by this point, seized all Klarenberg's electronic devices, forced him to provide unlock codes for his phone and tablet, taken his SD cards, and combed through thousands of his personal photos. A week after releasing Klarenberg from detention, police returned his tablet with masking tape over its cameras, along with 2 memory cards. The police kept one old SD card, mostly containing music. On the grounds it may be relevant to criminal proceedings. He remains under investigation by the British state at the time of publication. So guys, journalists are being, journalists, whistleblowers, activists, podcasters, those who are pushing against the narrative are now being harassed, investigated, detained, arrested, threatened, and all this stuff. This is becoming very scary. You may ask, am I scared? I'm not scared, but I'm worried that one day I would also be subjected to such an investigation. For doing what? Posting my opinion online, doing citizen journalism, trying to show the other side of the story. This is the crime now in a free democratic countries. It's becoming ridiculous. And Tara is in Russia. Julian Assange is in prison. Other also Snowden is in Russia. Kit Klarenberg, Vanessa Beeley were arrested, investigated, interrogated. I was asked thousands of questions here in Germany. I was accused of being a spy. I was accused of being a propagandist. And I haven't yet spoken about my case publicly. I will do it. But just the right time, at the right time. There are so many considerations. I was also politically persecuted here. And I was threatened with deportation from Germany for doing what? You know me now since 2017. What crime have I committed except for posting videos and talking my mind and telling you what I think is the truth? Maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. Post counter arguments. Don't come after me and try to persecute me. That's a sign that I'm doing something right. And we have finally Gonzalo Lira, this Chilean-American blogger in Ukraine. He was arrested and accused. And if the accusations, if the court finds him guilty, he will go 13 years in prison for supporting Russia and criticizing Zelensky. And the State Department here, they refuse to defend their own citizen. So just for you guys to know, I dislike Gonzalo Lira's writings on women. I detest it. I find it very ugly, what he thinks about women. And I dislike his personality. I think he's a narcissistic guy, but that's just me. And So, but at the same time, I don't believe that somebody who is doing blogging and posting videos on YouTube should be arrested or sent to jail. Even for the people who disagree with me, and even for the people who are completely pushing for the opposite narrative. Anyways, this was all, guys, for today. I wanted to shed light on these important cases. I think it's you should be outraged, and you should be active, and you should show support for these people. So please go to Tara Reade's Twitter. I will post the link also in the description. Go show her some support and love. And let's hope that one day she testifies on the oath and the truth prevails. I've been your host, Almassian of Syriana Analysis. If you're new, please subscribe and hit the like button and share this video with your friends and on your social media accounts. And if you want to support my independent commentary work and support independent journalism and independent journalists like myself, please become a patron. Link in the description below. And see you next time.